Right, hello. Welcome to our podcast. So I'm Dr. Marilyn Ward, and this is my friend Sarah, Dr. Sarah Gordon, and we are going to discuss the PhD journey, the trials and tribulations of this journey. So, um, Dr.
And there
Sarah,
were
would you like?
definitely lots of them.
Yes, yes,
But happy to say here we are and we finished the journey.
yeah.
And it
We're on
was
the other side of that mountain.
we are and we learned a lot and we thought that we would put this podcast together. This is our first episode and just share about our experiences and lessons learned from this journey. So we hope that you find this interesting and
Entertaining.
entertaining, and we have no idea what we're doing because it's our first, so bear with us.
Yeah, and we'll our episodes could go based on our feedback from you all. So if there's certain things that maybe you want to learn about the journey, please just comment, send us a message or whatever. But we do have an outline we're kind of following, but doesn't mean that that could change because one thing we've learned in this journey is to be adaptable. Okay, so
Exactly.
that was probably a number one thing for both of us was to be adaptable. But today we kind of just want to talk about the PhD dream versus the reality, like what we kind of expected and what actually happened. So
And
first, I
Meryl,
wanted to ask you, Dr. Gordon, what was your profession before you started your school? Before,
sure. So the thread of research was always in my career, even though I did different types of research over the years. Um, and so I've always been drawn to more of an academic based research uh, position, whatever jobs I took over the years, whether I was in disability awareness research, market research, personal, like the personal research in the government. Okay, so I was the marketing director in a financial investment firm, and I really found myself just the pull and the desire. Okay, so I would find myself sitting at lunch on my lunch time, my lunch hour, whatever time I had, just going up to like the American College of Sports Medicine website and just going into Google research and just starting to look at research for exercise science, health promotion, and human performance. And it was just in my heart. I wanted to go back to school to understand what physical activity did or the impact it has on chronic illness. And
oh,
so
wow.
I just took a leap of faith and joined our program, Concordia University Chicago, which is an online program. I went back in the August of 2020 to school during COVID, and the rest is history. Here we are, and it's been an amazing journey, and I'm so excited to share it with our listeners who might be thinking about going back to do some big challenge in their life, whatever it may be. And I hope that you learn from our experiences. So
Yeah.
now
No,
tell
I
me a
think
little bit how you got into it.
great. Well, I've been in the wellness coaching business for years, like since 2007 as a wellness coach. Well, I started off like as a personal trainer, and then I wanted to, deal with nutrition. So then I went to school for that. And so I just kind of kept going and going, and I did everything separate. I got my associates, then I went to another school for my bachelor's, another school for my master's, but it was always in that field of study. I work with special needs. So at one time, I thought, okay, that is going to be the route I take. And I love research as well. I didn't dig as deep into it as you, maybe just during my thesis for my master's, but um, a new science it's always changing, right? And I've learned that with studies. And that's why during this journey, we had to stay within what, 5 years of relevant research. So I was like, all right. So I wanted to keep going, but I started working with seniors. And that's when I was like, that is one thing. Because my thesis was on obesity. I'd started a nonprofit from it. I wanted to help fight the obesity epidemic. But then I fell in love with seniors and aging. And I was like, that's one thing we all have in common, right?
Mhm.
We all, as soon as we're born, start the aging process. So I was like, I don't want to age like some of these people are aging. I want to age. I want to have longevity and I want to be vibrant and I want to, just keep doing as much as I can while I can, instead of just saying, oh, now I'm a senior, give me my rocking chair. So I knew I wanted to keep going and I wanted my PhD for a couple of reasons. One, my children. I never want to expect more from my kids than I've ever done myself. So I was like, well, if I go all the way, they have no excuse to say, well, mom, you didn't do it. And then I wanted that credibility. I knew the more knowledge I gained, the more credibility I would have as being a coach. I wanted to be the best wellness coach, for my clients. So I knew I wanted to go all the way. When I started working, I worked at a very prestigious senior home, community living, and you kind of want to rub shoulders with those you want to be like. And they were all professors, doctors, lawyers. Most all had, PhD, ED, whatever it was. I was like, nice. This was awesome. They were so encouraging. They had a scholarship program, so I was able to apply for that, and they were all rooting for me all along the way, helping me, giving me insight, giving me like, hey, it's tough to stick it out. Keep it simple was probably one of the best tips because I struggled a little bit with figuring out what I was going to do. But keeping it simple was probably one of the best tips that I had received. So that's kind of how I got here. And during COVID as well. We started at the same time, right?
August 2020.
August 2020. Yeah.
You have a faster pace than me. So if we were out on a run, you're probably
Yeah.
more like an 8-minute miler, maybe sub eight.
Oh,
I'm more
I
like a
love you.
12-minute miler.
I'm definitely more. Yeah, I might have been a 10, never an 8.
But we
Now I'm,
crossed. We crossed
yeah,
the finish line.
now
But
I'm slipping, but that's okay.
but as you're talking about kind of how you got into this and the people in your community that supported you, I think as we start to talk about our experiences and to help other people who are, when you think about expectations versus the reality of getting your doctorate, I think it's so important to recognize that you don't necessarily do it alone, that
Right.
you have people in your life that lift you up, that might guide you, that might even pull you backwards a little bit. It's interesting the obstacles that emerge when you set your mind towards a goal. Now, people might
Yeah.
not necessarily be putting those obstacles in your path,
Yeah.
but they happen. And so I think the expectation when you start, you might think it's just about taking your coursework and just moving on a straight path forward to the finish line. And the reality of the situation is it is not a straight path. It
No.
it has curves and there's different people along the way. And be grateful for all of it. Be grateful
Yeah.
for the people who
The
are patient with
naysayers will
you.
make you stronger.
Yes. And be patient for the people, so you do get tired. You
Yeah.
get irritable and you have loved ones and family members, perhaps spouses or children or they're on the sidelines. So I think that as we start to dive into expectations versus reality, which is what this first episode, uh, at least in the beginning, we like to talk about, is just be open, like Marilyn said, to being adaptable
Yeah.
in the process.
You have
What do
to.
you
The
think?
change.
You agree?
Oh, I totally agree. Because I think, like you said, you have those cheering for you. And then unfortunately, you have the naysayers. And not that they meant any harm, I don't think, but it was, well, why are you doing this? Are you going to further your career with this? And for me, it was never about getting in a higher position, maybe at my current job, because, it wasn't based on a degree at that level. So that wasn't the issue, but I knew I also that wasn't going to be my end goal to live there, to be at, at that desk. I also said I can't run the lifestyle department with a PhD. I made that joke. They all knew I was going to grow up and, spread my wings and fly. So you had a few people like, why are you doing it? And I was like, it's more than that. It's more than what you're thinking. It's more than just a job. So I think the naysayers, you need those because they help build your backbone and reinforces the reason why you're doing it.
Yes.
Reinforces your motivation to keep going and to be like, because what's the best thing to do when somebody is putting you down is to prove them wrong,
Yes. Well,
right?
and that's interesting,
Might
Marilyn,
be saying that
because
whole thing wrong, but
no, well, in one of my very early classes, I had a teacher that said, like, I came to the program with a background in psychology, not a strong exercise science background. And the teacher basically said, good luck in the program. I mean, really, it was flat out, good luck. Like, you're not going to make it. For me, it just fueled fire to the passion.
oh, yes.
So I guess that's another way when you start the PhD journey, your expectations is that it may be a great experience and
Yeah,
everybody, there are a lot of people on your side, but you might have people who, you know, you get discouraged with at some point.
right.
That maybe that's the reality. And so in those moments, you just dig deep and
Oh,
you
yeah.
stay focused. And
Because, yeah, the dream it is. It's so big if you're like,
right,
as soon as I got accepted, right? Like the acceptance letter, I was like, oh my gosh, the dream
right.
is in fruition. But then I'm like, oh, no, no, no. I was like, well, and I think they told you the same, that was going to take us 5 years.
Yes.
And I just finished short under, I think me and you were only a few months apart from
Yeah.
graduation, but it was
Like four
like,
and a half years.
yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I'm like, I'm finishing almost a year early. Like, this is great. But back then I thought, 5 years, what did I just sign up for? The first class wasn't bad. I think the first class, I can't really, something with,
Philosophy of scientific knowledge.
yes. So that was really a fun class, completely new for me. But then we started digging deep into like the neuromuscular, and depending on the professor, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not what I signed up for. So that my big dream of like, this is gonna be great. And then it slowly, and then all the obstacles. I think within the first couple of months, it was like the COVID and just dealing with that. And then a few months later, I had a death in the family. The next year, I had another death in the family. And I'm like, maybe this isn't what am I doing right now?
But that,
But
but that, that's a really important point that you just made is because I think as we go move into challenges, I think to be successful in a doctorate program, you have to understand that life happens, that
right.
the education and the requirements of the program kind of have to ebb and flow through the
Yeah.
nuances of life. It's because you don't know what's going to happen. You could lose a job, you could get a new job, you could have an aging parent, you could have a loss, you could have a birth. Good things, sad things. And 5 years is a long period of time
Yeah.
to pursue a goal. And to think that you can just put your life on hold for 5 years is not
Right.
realistic. So, as you consider a PhD journey or a journey to anything, law school, medical school, wanting to do an Ironman, whatever you set, whatever that mountain is that you want to climb, you have to understand that it has to it's going to become interwoven with your
Yeah.
life. And so
And it's baby
don't give
steps.
up. And it's baby steps.
I think it's just like a wellness journey. We're always talking about it's baby steps. You're not gonna do it all right then and there. It's going to be all these little tiny steps that get us to that next thing that takes that dream to becoming a reality. It's just one foot in front of the other and keep
Yes.
going and don't let the become adaptable when the negative things come. But that's where you got to build. And that's where I think I talked with this before with you, where like the difference of that I call it the inner cheerleader. But what keeps us going? Why didn't we quit? And I know we might be jumping on some of these other topics that we have, and I'm trying to stay focused on the current. But it is those like to get to from the dream to the reality, you have to have that inner cheerleader pushing forward, especially when those obstacles come. Like I remember we had a hurricane. During a hurricane, I'm trying to do homework at work because we had to stay overnight. The lights kept going on and off. I'm like, I got to get this paper done. and I never once wanted to turn in an assignment late. Like that, just I never, it wasn't an option for me. I'm like, and I think a professor maybe said it in the beginning, like at this level, you just don't turn in late work,
Right.
right? You just don't.
Well,
So,
and again, I think you make a really good point about baby steps because the truth is when you get to a PhD level program, the expectation is that you're bringing a certain level of academic, um, that you can
discipline.
handle a certain level of academic rigor. But the
Yes.
truth is that if you look at it, for our program, it's 67 credits, I believe. And if you look at it as a whole, I mean, I always love the expression like you can't eat a whole elephant. You
Yes.
eat a little, like one bite at a time. I know it's kind of a silly thing to say, but
No, it was our
it's
Mary Kay thing. We had to get
okay,
in
so
at Mary
you
Kay. So
you can't
totally.
conquer any big goal like this by thinking of it at it in its entirety. So you
Yeah.
go, like you said, baby steps, step by step, and then it's amazing to think, I mean, let's look back. We did it.
We did. Yes.
But you mentioned when we were in advanced neuromuscular exercise physiology, and we were reading about all these studies that were just mind-boggling. In
Yeah.
that moment, we probably thought, how are we going to get through this?
Oh my
But you
gosh.
do,
Yes.
but you do. And I think that's the beauty of human growth is that
And that,
we don't know how much potential we have.
right. Because not only at this level, being in a, with a PhD, how different it was from the master's, right? So like, especially when it came to writing. So not only were we, because you're supposed to already be, pretty fluent in the exercise science field. So most of this wasn't new, it was just more advanced,
Yes.
deeper, digging deeper. So not only did you have to know that, learn that, at that level, then you also had to become a scientific writer.
Yes.
So you had that for me because I remember even back years ago, I think I got my master's then 2010, maybe 20 says anyway, whatever, irrelevant. But just back then, you could make big paragraphs, like parentheses and paragraph, and as long as you cited it. And when they were like, "Oh no, 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 we don't use all paraphrasing," and I talked about this before, no use of the pronouns, the whole writing thing was so different for me that it was kind of a struggle. I had a really tough professor, but I remember thanking her at the end, two professors that I thanked at the end for their um, toughness or however word to
I
describe
like to
them.
say thank you for the hard lessons.
Yes, because it made me such a better writer in the end, and it made me fully understand um, how to read other papers. Because right when you sometimes when we read other studies, I'm looking at it, it was like reading foreign language. I thought I'm never going to be able to write like this. But after having her as a professor and an advisor, I was like, okay, now I get it. Now I get what these other people are saying because I'm writing it and I'm understanding it better. So I definitely think it made me a better writer and a better researcher.
So let me ask you this, as we reflect on our experiences, um, I think there's something called imposter syndrome. And I think that you experience it in different ways along the journey.
Hmm.
And I guess my advice to those who are listening to us today is embrace it. Don't be scared of it. It just means that you're growing in an area that you don't, and perhaps don't have a lot of confidence in. So for us, maybe in the beginning, maybe for myself, I didn't even see myself as a scientific writer. I would read articles like you're saying, publish peer review articles, that are in high tier journals. And I would say to myself, gosh, I don't think I could ever write like that. And the
Yeah.
reality is, after 5 years, guess what? We can write like that.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's a very common feeling to perhaps think you don't belong someplace, which
Yeah.
has been called imposter syndrome.
Being
And
called Dr. Marilyn Ward. I'm like,
right.
I still hesitate to say it.
And
I very rarely in situations am I like, hi, I'm Dr. Anna Ward, you know?
absolutely. I'm like, no, I'm Sarah who likes to jump in puddles and go
Yes.
on trails and get all muddy. But I think the point is like it's okay to feel that way. And that's kind of the point I want to make. Like give yourself a chance to grow into something that's new for you.
Yeah.
And that would be, some my advice as part of the this journey, PhD journey. Did you feel it at all
Oh, I totally. I
beyond what you
still
just
sometimes
shared?
still feel it. I remember thinking to myself, am I good enough? Am I, and I've always received, like in high school, now if I had to base my college years on I'd have been like, don't even go, Marilyn, don't even go. High school to me, I wrote for the fashion column in our school newspaper. It was all about the social, was not about academics, getting good grades. I didn't care. I made enough grades to pass and to graduate. But it wasn't until I got into college that I really cared. And I was like, and I'm a little bit competitive. And I think that started after the military. And when I got into racing, I'm more competitive than I like to admit. But not to the point that I have to always be first, but I just want to be good. I want to be better than a few more people.
So
So,
that's a good point because when we talk about challenges on this journey, we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves.
oh, yes,
And I don't know, the old expression, and maybe I don't even know how to say it correctly, like the
I
chicken,
kill a cliche. So,
which came first, the chicken or the egg?
oh,
But
yeah.
I mean, do we end up in PhD programs or these advanced degree programs, whatever they may be, because we enjoy the pressure?
Yeah,
Or
right.
do,
And I'm a
or are we,
perfectionist.
right, or are we just wired that way and that propelled us to this level? I think that's important. And our next episode is we're gonna talk about the mental health toll of having enormous pressure on yourself when perhaps you're in medical school or law school or working on your doctorate, because there is a toll on feeling burnout and anxiety and all those kinds of things. So, and we'll talk about that in our second episode. But as we are just kind of introducing you to this PhD journey, um, narrative that we're having today, discussion, I think it's important to understand the challenges that will come up
Right.
and this concept of pressure and how you manage it and where does it come from and
Absolutely. And why? Like
why.
why I think everything we do, especially when it comes to our careers or life, you have to have a why. You have to have a purpose because otherwise it's like nothing. And if it's not, they say if you don't dream big enough, if your dream doesn't scare you, you didn't dream big enough.
True.
So this dream totally scared me because I thought, here I am again. I said I wanted my degree by the time I was 50, just, made that cutoff. But it was like, what am I doing at 45 years old, starting this program? Like, am I crazy? Why did I do it? But I was like, I set that goal years ago. It's so funny. I do a dream board every year. And this was years ago. I have on my board, I maybe had just finished my bachelor's or master's, whatever. And on my board, I have a little person speaking and it says PhD on the side. And I was like, so that's how long. And I took a break. I took a big break from my master's to my PhD. And I think because I was like, well, had a lot of life things happening, and that was part of the reason. And then a little bit of me might have been that self-sabotage where I was like, you're too old to do this. Why are you doing this? What is the outcome? And so thank goodness I have that inner cheerleader that was like, you're gonna do it. One, you said you were gonna do it, and if I say it, I'm gonna do it. So I did. But then there's also that, like, I just again wanted to be an example for my kids. And if I didn't do it, oh, they'd let me know for sure. So I couldn't let them down. But there was definitely part of me, and I'm glad my inner cheerleader squashed, that little my angel and my devil like sitting on my shoulder. I'm so glad that, my angel, you know, you know, spoke a little bit louder in my ear
Well,
because
And that's interesting because we're going to move on to personal reflections and talking about like just early doubts and how you manage those. But I just wanted to say, similar to you, because I started the program at age 53 and I'm now 58. So when I decided to go back, I got a lot of, well, why? Well, why would you do that at this age? When actually a lot of my peers are starting to have some goals towards retirement,
Yeah,
early 60s, whatnot. Some people are fortunate to be able to retire in their late 50s, but
right. It's a
I
money,
don't,
not an age thing, right?
well, I
When you
don't
have enough
necessarily
money
even,
to retire.
yeah, I don't necessarily even call it retire. I like the philosophy of refiring. You can restart. But my response was, well, why not?
Yeah, really.
I think that's the point about growth and about learning is that there's no time limit on it and there's no right or wrong. And so if you are thinking about going back to do something, whatever it may be,
Yeah,
if it's on your heart, go for it. And if
absolutely.
somebody,
I love learning. I really honestly
right.
love being in school. And I think it's because of that. I call it good punishment.
Yeah, there's no
Like
age limit on it.
yeah. And
And
you
you
can,
started it in the beginning by saying you have a passion to understand age, successfully aging. And
yeah.
I think that's such a key component about lifelong learning. And
Oh,
so maybe
yes.
it's easier in your 20s. Maybe you think your life is less complicated, but really the point there is there's really
You
no perfect time to start anything.
absolutely.
Life just
If
has a
you want it
way.
bad enough, if you want it bad enough, you'll do it. It's like trying to save money for kids.
Yeah,
There's no amount of money there. There's no dollar limit that says if you have this much money in the bank, you can start having kids.
it's like
You
you
wing it.
it's like you finally have a little money in your bank
Yeah.
account and then your car breaks down. Or
Yes.
your air
Yes.
conditioning
So
breaks. Like there's never going to be a perfect time. So if
yeah,
you're
there's
thinking about
always
it, you just
gonna be
go for
something.
it.
Yes, yeah, and why not? Like, if you're not, if you're just out there, I always, and I think like I compare myself to my peers or my friends, and I'm like, well, why did we do it this way, and why did they do it that way? Most of my friends all went to school right out of, all went to college right out of high school. I didn't. I flailed around. The school I was going to go to way back when was for, I wanted to be a fashion merchandiser or a fashion designer. And the one school that I was going to go to, it had several like different areas. And though I was going to go local so I could work at home or live at home. I'm going to find out that was the only school that didn't carry that particular program. It threw my whole world upside down. So I was like, okay. So fast forward a few years later, I went to the military instead, joined the Air
That's
Force,
awesome.
and you know, but even then, I could have went back to school then, and I didn't. I had to be right up my boyfriend's butt. So there's
Well, but I think what you're sharing is, and we wanted to talk about it, is navigating the transition. And I think
yeah.
that's just so important that, and I always laugh and I say I'm a late bloomer, right? So, I mean, I did go to college after high school and whatnot, but I didn't really find my purpose and passion until this program. But I feel like, how you ended up, and I would love for you to share a little bit about how being in the military maybe prepared you for the discipline and the academic
Oh,
rigor of this program, because that kind of twist and turn in your life, maybe that prepared you even more for the program. What do you
it
think?
def it definitely made me more resilient to that because I did have to deploy um, during 9/11 and like right after 9/11. So, being pulled away from my husband at the time, my 2-year-old child, that was tough. And so when people say it's tough, but also the military and just in general, like I was after I got out of the military, I was a single mom, two little kids, working full time, was going to school at night, or would come home and go to school, on my lunch, like because I worked at a gym. Nobody really worked out on their lunch, so I would quickly come home, do some schoolwork. So when people come and say, "Well, I can't do it," and they tell me all of these reasons why they can't do something, it's why I picked my business name, No Excuses. I'm like, don't tell me you cannot because I know you can because I just did it, right? Like I just and I started school late. I did not start, I think, my associates until I was 32 years old. So probably way later, than you. And I did it in sections, but and all with kids and all with this. But I do think the military makes you very disciplined in everything. I still, and this is maybe too much information, but I still fold my underwear the same way we had to in basic training. That's
No.
how much the military has stuck with me. If you're 15 minutes early, you're late because you're supposed to be there even 15 minutes early to the 15 minutes. So there are so many things from the military that have stuck with me into, through now.
But
And I love
what would you say to somebody that's considering to go back to get a doctorate degree, and doesn't feel like they have that level of discipline in their life? I mean, how do you start to set up systems to be successful? I mean, how do you set realistic expectations for yourself? Because depending on what age you are when you decide to do something like this, you bring a certain level of your habits.
right.
So what do you think, just for our listeners, what do you think are good habits to have or to learn or strategies?
Time management is a huge one, but I will say that sometimes you just have to fake it till you make it. That's another Mary Kay quote we used to say. But a lot of the time, you don't know what you're capable of until you're thrown in to the situation. That I will say in the military, we had this thing called Base X where you went out and you played war and you wouldn't know that you could carry a body, you're in full chem gear, mask, a big old backpack, and having to, do a fireman carry with somebody on your back. And if somebody would have told me that that's what I had to do, I'd have said, heck no, there's no way. But when you're thrown into that situation, your adrenaline and everything else, it's that inner person again, that inner fighter that comes out, and you're like, oh, wow, I can do it. So you have to find that inner person. You have to dig deep. So the strategies to do that, you got to write it down. I always think like if if whatever it is that you have inside of you, write down what you think your great qualities are, right? Write them down. Even if they're the slightest way off the like maybe you don't quite believe that you're that great yet. Write it down. So finding out what it is that you are, time management, you've got to be disciplined with time, for sure, because this is if you're juggling, if you're not, hey, if you're just a student at home and you don't have any other responsibilities, that might not be anything for you. But I will say it's always the more stuff on my plate, the better I am with it,
Yeah.
right?
And I feel, to add to what you're saying, to just take some action. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be perfect. Look at us. You're listening to our very first episode of our podcast, The PhD Journey. And so I think I agree with you about writing things down. And I
Yeah.
do think that you need to have some type of systems in place
Yeah.
to be successful and to set realistic expectations for yourself. But I also think that it's important to embrace the learning curve. That
Mhm.
it's not, like we said earlier, it's not going to be a straight path. And it wouldn't even be fun if it was a straight path, because all the little curves in the path of the PhD journey are where you learn new things, you make new friends, like Marilyn and myself. We met through this journey, and other classmates who, in the weeks and episodes to come, we're going to invite on as guests.
Yeah, it's gonna
We're
be exciting.
excited to share their stories with you as well. And just and don't be hard on yourself.
Right. You've
You
got to
can
give
do it.
yourself that
Yeah.
the okay to be like, I'm not perfect. Because I'll have to say, read like remember like doing Blackboard, discussions. And I can remember, like replying to students on their discussions. And I'm like, man, these people are really smart, like really, really smart. And I felt like, am I at that level? Like, am I giving just this, quality of feedback back to the students? And maybe that's where that imposter syndrome would kind of flare up because I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I'm, um, you know, doing this correctly, or if I'm up to the same level as some of our classmates.
And
Did you feel that way?
I would like to tell our listeners that not only did she do great, but she was, I think, you were the first person in our cohort to finish.
Oh yeah. Well, that's,
And
I think
so
that,
congratulations on that.
yay!
I mean, not that it
Yeah.
was about that, but I do
No.
think it gives some validity to why we wanted to do this podcast in the first place, because we're just two women who decided to go back and get their doctorates for different reasons, but
And
later,
opposite
later,
sides of the world, right? Like
yes,
we're not world, but from the United States. You're up
yeah,
north.
and you're a brunette
I'm,
and I'm a blonde.
yeah, we're so polar opposites. Like,
We are, but what I think what the thread that unites us is that we both are passionate about living a quality life, aging with good health, and the importance of physical activity in that process. Now, for me, my dissertation study was with older triathletes, studying exercise motivation and perspectives on successful aging. So Marilyn and I, while our topics were slightly different, we both were focusing on older adults and the importance of successful aging. So
and you're a triathlete as well, though, right?
we both are
Uh,
triathletes,
yep, triathletes. Ironman did
half Ironman.
half. Yep, same half. I'm not
But we've
full.
talked about the Ironman, and maybe we'll get that. Maybe that'll be one of our episodes of how to climb the Ironman journey. And if we have any listeners who are starting the PhD journey, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear how to conquer the Ironman journey.
Yes, yes. The
So,
full stuff.
so today we wanted to introduce ourselves and just talk a little bit about why we decided to go back to get our doctorates. And then just talk about some of the challenges that we experienced, whether it was in our daily lives, whether it was professors, naysayers, or just the academic toughness of the program. Um, Share some personal reflections with you. I'm sure we could share many more.
Oh,
We
girl.
don't want to, bore you with all of the details, at least in this first episode. And then just some strategies to put in place. So we hope you've enjoyed this first episode. Is there anything you like to say, Marilyn, before we
Um,
wrap
just
up?
believe in yourself. Just believe in yourself. Believe you can do it. Like zone out anything, that doesn't fit your path. If it's what you want, do it. You know, just just do it.
Go
Just
for it.
start. Yeah. Start,
Amen.
call that school and get the stuff.
Alrighty.
But
Well, we are excited to bring this new discussion
yes,
to
it's
the
gonna be great.
world, and we'll be open to your feedback so we can get better at this each week. And so we thank you for listening,
Yeah.
and we hope you'll join us on our next episode.
Yes.
All
We'll
right.
see you again.
See you again. Bye.